How am I going to make money in the stock market in 2025? What's the secret? How do I do it? Where is the next NVIDIA? These are the wrong questions. The questions of trying to pick the next winner is a fool's errand. Why? Because no one to this point has been able to find out what makes a stock tick and what makes the stock goes up. So what's the solution, my friends? The solution is for you to understand the mood of the market. There have been plenty of opportunities. There have been plenty of situations. There have been plenty of cases when the stock was doing horrible while the company was doing great. Case in point, let's take a look at Tesla, right? So Tesla's earnings, let's look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA's earnings have been doing great. Have you seen what happened when the story goes against the earnings of the company? Meaning that they thought, well, they're doing great, but I thought they were going to do a lot better. So what are we looking for really? Are we looking for more earnings, more cash flow, or a lot more, or a lot more? Who decides where the item that's going to make a difference is going to make a difference? Look at what happened with Tesla. It's amazing, and I have plenty of more cases to show you. But let's talk about Tesla a little bit. Let's take a look at Tesla. So what happened in October? You know, remember we had the situation with the robotaxi. No one liked it. Why? Well, no one liked it because, quite frankly, we really didn't like the fact they didn't provide us enough information. We didn't like the fact is you didn't like the guy. So you have to be careful because there's a fair amount emotional in a story, which makes sense. It's emotionally tied between what we think about the stock and what we're going to do with it. Why is that? That's human condition. That is the issue with being a human and being involved in the stock market. It makes it more difficult. So take a look at Tesla. What happened? Nobody liked it. And then worse, a lot worse, he starts campaigning with Donald Trump. I mean, that was really bad. Why? Because Trump was going to win, was going to lose. And you could see, in fact, I've picked up some of the videos that were done before and basically saying Tesla sucks. Why? A, we don't know what they're doing. B, they have this idea all the time. Elon Musk always promises and fails to deliver on time. He doesn't give us any details. We have no idea when the cheaper version of Tesla is going to come out. Okay? So all these things, it was bad. And then, of course, they said, yeah, look at him. Shouldn't he be building cars instead of going out and spending time with loser Donald Trump? And then what happened? Donald Trump won again. Unheard of. Okay? And these same people now are saying, well, I mean, you know, sure, it's going to be great for him because Trump is going to help him. And that's when the stock went up. But then as the stock is kind of favoring, they say, well, you know what? It is overvalued. You know what? Maybe him and Trump are going to pick a fight. Maybe this is going to work out. But my point being, I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong. What I'm saying to you, there's a fair amount of emotional, there's a baggage in there, which is not a bad thing. Why? Because that's what you assume, and it has nothing to do with the numbers. Therefore, you as an investor, maybe you don't need to worry so much about the cash flows, about the income statement, about any of that. What you want to worry about is, what are people thinking? Are you thinking like the other people? And there's been a theme, recurring theme. If you catch the wave, if you understand the wave, and if you're with the wave, then you will profit. Look what happened with QQQ, which is basically, QQQ represents all of the Magnificent Seven, all of the tech stocks. And it's been they've been doing great in terms of earnings, right? All the tech stocks have been going up, but we wanted to know what was going to happen with the rate. That story, that emotional story got tied. In fact, if you look at some of my past videos, don't forget, I would appreciate if you could subscribe to this channel and like this video. Listen to me. So basically, emotionally, there was a link between QQQ and the whether or not rates were going to go up or down. This is extremely powerful for you, the investor. Why? Because now you have a tool. You don't need maybe to learn about machine learning. You don't need to learn about so much about finance. What you need to know is, where is it? Where is the mood going? What is the real story? And of course, because it's emotionally driven, this type of trading is really day trading or swing trading, unless you go for the long haul. But if you go for the long haul, you don't need to worry too much about it. You buy QQQ, that thing is not going to disappear. But I'm not talking about making 10, 20% a year here. I'm talking making 15, 25, 4,000% a year. That is where the money is. That is how you make money in the stock market. But that is also where it's complicated. What you also need to understand, besides this idea that the story is tied to the emotional aspect of the stock, because it is emotional, you also need to understand there's such a thing as the price risk itself and the credit risk, right? The price risk is basically how do we think the stock is going to move? But the stock price, not anything else. What governs that movement? What governs the cloud creation? Why is it that clouds looks the way they do? Why is it that plants or trees grows the way they do with so many? Is it random? No, it's not random. One day you don't have a tree that's 500 feet tall and then that's 200 feet tall, right? There's a certain law in that randomness, right? It's not totally random. There's an order. You need to find it. And the same thing with the stock market. That's what's called fractals, by the way. But that's a different topic. So how do we make money? Well, when we make money in the stock market is by understanding the story. Take a look at VMC, for example, Vulcan Materials. Now, all the companies that I'm talking to you about are all making money and all have growing sales, right? So we don't have to worry about the credit risk. We're mostly focusing on the price risk because at the end of the day, we want the price to go up. So VMC, Vulcan Materials, is the largest play in infrastructure in the US. Meaning they're going to build the roads, they're going to build the bridges, they're going to do all these things. At some point, we need to do it because Biden wanted to do it. If you look at the chart of VMC, you will see that the stock price was going all the way up as we were approaching November 6th. Why? We were doing great because we thought that Biden was going to be elected, and therefore we thought that he was going to be spending more money in infrastructure. And he didn't get elected, and the stock went down. Okay? So, but the company has great financials. So how do I deal with something like that? You need to understand that right now, VMC's story is very much tied, you said it, it is tied to the infrastructure aspect of things. Has Trump talked about that? No. And that's a problem, right? Because he's not talking about it. Therefore, emotionally, there's no connection between the two. So the stock has been languishing, It went up and now it's going down. And that's what's amazing, right? I mean, how do we deal with something like that? Well, the way you deal with something like that is that you pick your winners and you pick your losers. Because you need to make sure that you understand what's going on. Next, GCT, Giga Cloud Technology. Great company. When I say great company, making money, growing, acquiring, good reputation. What's been happening with the stock? Nothing. It's been going down, it's been going up around 21, 2019, 18, 2019, 18, maybe 21. Okay. What's going on with this stock? Well, this stock story is about it being a small cap, less than $2 billion in market cap. What's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is the market has not focused on small caps. It's been focusing on the Magnificent Seven, not on so emotionally, the market is not tied to this stock. And emotionally means you have waves. Remember the wave what happened to Tesla at the end of the year, beginning of the end of the year? It went almost to $500. And what was the great equalizer for all these stocks? Well, December 18th, when the Fed basically said, you know what? I am not going to do 4 cuts. I'm going to do 2. That was it. It was the end of the world. That is crazy if you think about it, right? We have a growing economy. We got trillions of dollars sitting on the sidelines. We've got low unemployment compared to other countries. Inflation, quote unquote, as measured by the CPI, is hovering around 3%. I mean, the real inflation is a different topic. The point is, we're not doing that bad compared to other countries. So what are you doing? What's going on? The story. The emotional story. Right now, we want more cuts and we think we're not going to get it. I mean, this kind of concept, everyone should be able to get it. It's not complicated. Right? You're going to get the cuts, you're not going to get the cuts. Is that what they're worried about? Then they stay away from QQQ right now. Be careful about Tesla. That's the story. The thing is, so for me to make money in the stock market, I need to know what the upcoming story is going to be or what is driving currently. And how do I know? And that, my friends, is a difficult part because no one really, there is no indicator. I mean, speaking of indicator, at the end of the day, if you want to know how much the stock is going to earn, how much it earned last week, a month ago, 2 months ago, compared to all of its peers, you've got plenty of data. Right, I mean, look at the Wall Street Journal, go on CNBC or whatever. All day long, you see the numbers at the bottom, up and down, 20%, 30%. Now, what you see a little bit less of is risk. What is my risk to buy stocks? Well, you got to look at the beta, which is kind of a measure of risk, but it's not really the greatest measure of risk. You could extend a deviation. Where do I see that? You can't see it. It's not obvious for everyone, okay? They don't want to show it to you, basically. Where's the story? No one talks about it. Or they talk about it, but they don't tell you that's the story. And you have to find out for yourself whether or not that's what's driving the stock. Let me be clear. If you look at a movie like Dracula, what's the story about Dracula? It's simple. The guy is running around and he's sucking the blood of the people all over the place. Is it truly the story of Dracula? If this is that simple, we make a movie about Dracula every single year and people go and see it because they want to see the theme. And what is the theme in Dracula, right? It's about life, it's about death, it's about living forever, about love, lots and lots of stories in there. That makes it interesting. And that's what you need to find out. What is the story in the market? So what is the story in the market right now? My friends, I believe that the story right now, I mean, it's not the market as a whole, right? You need to understand the story for every single stock. Right now, if you think about Tesla, the story seems to be that A, it's overvalued, but B, Trump is with him. So the story really is tied because the company is great, but the story is tied and I noticed last week, if you noticed, there was some discussion, they were plugging these things that Elon Musk wants to be a president and even Trump had to say, well, he has no chance of being president. So there is a fight between the two of them. And did you see what happened with the stock? It kind of been wavering around. Be careful because, and I said it in a previous video, I feel that the story is very closely tied to Trump. If these two start having a fight, then the bears on Tesla is going to say, you see, I told you, he's not going to get all these things he thought he was going to get from Trump, which is a regulation, which means he was going to help him and he's going to remove the tax credits against the other company. There's been lots of different things. So there was some concern that this was going to be taken away. So the story is kind of raving. Maybe that's what's happening to the stock right now. Of course, you say, well, how do I make money on that? Well, do you think that Trump is going to pick a fight with Elon Musk and kick him out? So that, frankly, is at everybody's mental ability to guess. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. It's a guess. You have to guess what Trump is going to do. So one, that's why it's difficult. One, you need to know what the story is. Okay, so the story is Trump is tied to Elon Musk because the company is doing great. It's announcing news all the time about all the things that they're coming up with and everything else. So it's a great company. It's making money. But what is the story? So now the story is tied to Trump. So now you have to, now that you know that, if assuming it's correct, you have to decide whether or not you think that Trump is going to pick a fight with Elon Musk. Do you think so? So what is that analysis or is that luck? I mean, do you know the guy? Are you there? You have to take a chance. You have to take a bet. You have to think. And that's the difficult part. So at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to pick a fight with Elon Musk. Why? Because Musk is not a danger to him. I don't think Musk emotionally is not going to be that kind of guy that's going to say things and against him. I don't think so. But that's my opinion. Okay. And of course, the lower the stock goes, the less chances you are to be wrong, obviously. And the stock was up the week before, and yesterday was down. So let's see what happens on Monday. Probably going to go back up again. The stock wants to go up. It just wants to validate. He wants to validate the story. Now, what do we do with QQQ? Well, QQQ basically is ETF. What is the story there? Well, the story has to do with whether or not what the Fed is going to do. And that is probably easier to pick up because QQQ is not just a stock, it's a bunch of stocks together. So there, I would think that the story is a lot easier to grasp. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, at the end of the day, do you think the Fed is going to lower rates? Yes. Okay, then the stock is going to go up because it got taken down because of what happened when he said we were going to go from 4 to 2. Now that we're down to 2, we're fine, we're at a level. And then, of course, a couple of days ago, the PCE came out and it was pretty much going down. So that helped. And yesterday, I believe, or the day before, we had some unemployment numbers. Basically, the claims are the highest that they've been in unemployment. And the Fed really does not want to go after unemployment. I mean, it doesn't want to hurt unemployment. It doesn't want to hurt employment. So unless you have a real problem with inflation, they're not going to, raise rates. They're going to lower rates, obviously. They need to do that at this point. So that's the story. That's a two-story concurrent working together. So you have to think about the two. GCT story is obviously the fact that it is a time, or is it not time for the small caps? What do you think that now is time for the small caps? If you think, then GCT is a great buy. But is it time for the small caps? Who decides? Well, obviously, the lower you have, the lower rates, the lower interest rates go down, the more likely small caps are going to do well, because they do well under the circumstances, because they like the fact that it's easier to finance. So small companies will do better. But who decides all these stories? And that is the mystery. But then again, how do you decide if you like someone and you don't like someone? Do you know how you decide? How do you decide whether or not you should be afraid and not afraid? Do you know how you decide? You don't decide. Your brain decides. What does that mean? Well, think of it. Your brain is basically encased in your skull. The brain doesn't see anything. The brain is in there, and it uses the eyes and the nose and the taste and the ears to see what's going on. How does it know what is really going on? How do you know what's really going on in the economy? Do you really think you know what's going on in the economy? How do you know? Because you're looking at the numbers. But the numbers that we've seen many times over are not really accurate. I mean, they're just, most of the time, they are evaluation. They are surveys. Remember the 1.8 million cases where we had 1.8 million less jobs opening than we thought? I refer you to my previous video on that. Okay? So we are kind of guessing there, and your brain is kind of guessing as well. There have been studies done on that. So basically, whatever you feel, whatever you see, whatever you think is happening, it's your brain essentially forecasting, projecting what it thinks is happening. Yeah, I know, it's kind of weird. Well, I mean, it happens all the time. You think you like someone and you realize you don't like this someone. You hear no, you say, what is that? Some people will say, don't worry about it, this is okay. Other people say, oh my God, somebody's breaking up in my house. I mean, this is emotional reactions, and believe it or not, that's what happens in the market. So how do you fix something like that? You don't fix it, unfortunately. You don't fix it. You have to kind of understand what's happening and control yourself. I mean, there have been many cases at some point where I was at minus return before I got involved with Tesla. I got taken back up again because of and I stood by the trade. I said, no, this is just a bunch of people telling a bunch of stories. Eventually they're going to turn around. And they did when Elon Musk won and when we had the Trump trade. Been riding it ever since. So you need to be aware that, and That's a secret sauce. You need to know that you do not know. I know it sounds stupid. Well, I'm not the one saying it. It was the first and the most illustrious philosopher of ancient time, which is Socrates. That's the biggest thing that he said. I know that I do not know. And he's right. You yourself don't really know. You're forecasting, you're projecting as what you think is coming. So imagine this in the market. You got you yourself you already have a disadvantage to begin with, right? Then you need to figure out what the story is, but not just your stories, everyone's stories at the same time. It's almost like the Matrix. And that is a difficult part. So how do you deal with something like that? Well, you need to be at least aware of what's going on. So meaning if you speak a stock like GCT, like Tesla, like VMC, that are doing great, but yet, financially, but yet the market just pounding on it. Don't sell because the story will change. They're not telling you that GMC or VMC, GCT or Tesla are bad. They're not making money. That's not what they're saying. They say, we don't like it. The story has changed. They're not part of the story anymore until they back up again. But who decides? It's a collective. How do you know what the collective is thinking? Well, I hate to tell you, but you got to be in the market every day, looking, searching, understanding, questioning, the way Socrates did. Socrates used to question everything. In fact, he was questioning so many things that he got in trouble for it. And also, you need to realize you cannot question and search and look and question every single stock in the... It's impossible, right? So you got to pick one or two or three. I've got VMC, GCT, Tesla, and QQQ. I think that's enough to make money on. And you just understand what the story is. Pick up the trades. Follow the earnings to make sure nothing is wrong at that level, because that all bets are off. And you kind of follow the earnings that way. You have more time, add more stocks. And then over time, you will realize what is really going on. Of course, there's also an overarching situation is that we are being looked at by the Fed, right? The Fed has an overbearing presence, which really shouldn't be. So that's one thing that's always worrying what they or he's going to say and picking a fight. So that's a big story that's always coming in through the door. The other thing, obviously, is the fact that stocks are pretty highly valued. So that makes thinking, the decision-making factor, and you being wrong a lot more difficult. By the way, don't forget, do subscribe to this channel. You will benefit from it, trust me. And the third thing, of course, is the fact that we do have what we call a black swan that keeps coming back and keeps shaking once in a while. Remember, and that's called the national debt could be a huge issue. Why? Because there is no fixing it, and they are talking about it. Remember, right now we're going to need to extend the debt ceiling, and we're getting reprieves, and then there's going to be politics involved, and Trump. That is you have to watch that very carefully. That story is even more potentially more powerful than the Fed story. And then, of course, the other story that you need to worry about, which is overarching, is, well, Trump is coming into the White House for real. Now he's going to be president. They're going to say, okay, what are you going to do? He said he was going to do it, he didn't do it. Oh, he's doing it too much. Oh, he's not doing enough, Then they're going to be that story wavering around all the other story at the same time. So how do you follow all this? You have to follow them. There's no other choice. You want to make money, you need to know what is happening. You could follow me for me to help you, to tell you where to look, but you got to follow the story, and you need to understand what's happening. Keep that in mind.